speaking of moral scions, Whoopi Goldberg in their discussion on The View of President Trump's abortion policy announcement decided to bring up the Ten Commandments.
And it's not mentioned in the Big Ten. I'm just going to say.
No.
In the Big Ten, it is not mentioned.
The commandments?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, because I figured God was pretty clear.
All right, so let's address that idea that something is not mentioned in the Ten Commandments, therefore it's not forbidden. Now, there's a lot of things not mentioned specifically in the commandments. And our Lutheran listeners will understand this, but for our non-Lutheran listeners, explain how we should look at the commandments and what those commandments actually mean beyond just the specific prohibitions.
Right. Yeah, if you look at, and of course, no, Luther isn't a writer of the scriptures. He is a teacher of the scriptures. And in the small catechism, and of course, to a much more lengthy extent in the large catechism, he shows that the Ten Commandments isn't simply about what you should not be doing, but what you should as well be doing in place of committing sin. You look at the explanation for each of the commandments, and it says, here's what you shouldn't be doing, but here's what you should be doing instead. You shall have no other gods before me. You should fear, love, and trust in God above all things is the explanation in the small catechism. So we often tend to think of them in a negative way according to our human nature that, well, this is what God is telling us what we can't be doing. He's a fun hater. He's a little dictator who is trying to dictate to us, what we cannot do. But ultimately it's about, and Jesus summarizes this in the Gospels, it's about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. And these 10 commandments give us a guideline, if you will, of how we ought to be loving our God, how we ought to be loving our neighbor. But to say that because something isn't in the Big Ten, as she puts it, so let's take that to its logical conclusion. She's trying to justify abortion because it's not listed specifically in the Ten Commandments. Well, in the Ten Commandments, it doesn't specifically say that you cannot beat your wife when she gets out of line. Right. But I think God would frown upon that thing. It doesn't specifically state that you cannot be a glutton, and so therefore gluttony is now acceptable, which is, it seems to be, if you look at the world around you, just go to your local Walmart. But suddenly, gluttony is okay now because it's not in the Ten Commandments, and neither is drunkenness. Well, I guess, why stop at one glass of whiskey? Maybe we'll finish the whole dang bottle.
Right. That's where we get the body positivity movement and all the... Yeah.
Although Lizzo now is talking about quitting music. So if I never had to see somebody posting an image of her on Facebook ever again, it wouldn't be soon enough.
Well, that would be a blessing to both our ears and our eyes if she gives...
Yes.
So to carry this a little further, so basically what, and you and I have talked about this many times on the show. So when we're talking about murder or killing, that not only covers you shouldn't kill your neighbor, but you also should help and defend them when possible. And we've talked about that many times. Adultery, you shouldn't just cheat. Not only should you not cheat on your wife, but you should also not encourage your friends to do the same. Right.
Well, and Jesus even puts it to the point of, if you look at a woman lustfully, you're committing adultery in your heart.
Right.
If we were to take that seriously, then perhaps we should be passing decency laws about what young women are wearing in public these days.
Right.
When I can see every contour of what lies below your waist as you're walking down the street, that's going to tempt men to think lustful thoughts, and you are causing men to sin. Let's just call it for what it is. Yeah, I know the feminist movement will call me a sexist, but I don't give a damn. So
that insult
but,
has
you know,
lost all
it's-
meaning at this point.
Yeah. But if you look at the Old Testament scriptures, and I'm not talking about ceremonial law because Christ fulfilled that. I'm talking about moral law that there are. If you read through the book of Leviticus in particular, and there's also a lot of commentary on the law in Deuteronomy as well. But there are laws about if a man strikes a pregnant woman and causes her baby to be born, and that baby dies, he is guilty of the death of that baby. If there's a miscarriage or a stillbirth as a result of some sort of physical assault,
Mm-hmm.
that the law states that man is guilty of death and should be killed. You have passages that talk about, if you're walking, and Jesus talks about this as well in one of the times that he's ripping on the Pharisees to their face. But if your neighbor's ox or donkey falls into a pit, that you're to help him get them out, that you're required to even come and render aid for the life of your neighbor's livestock. And that's a fifth commandment issue. If that livestock happens to perish, that's also threatens the livelihood of your neighbor. So there's plenty of laws that aren't specifically in the Decalogue, but are explicitly stated in Scripture as being moral laws. And to simply say that these no longer apply because it's not in the Ten Commandments, you're basically using the Scriptures to pick and choose what you like, to have a God that fits in a box for you so that you can feel justified doing whatever the heck you want to do.